Like you have that voice, so picture that being replaced with someone that you don't recognize and they're inside of your head and you're fighting with them and you can't get away from them. Like,
Hey there, Coach Devin here. I am super excited. I have a friend of mine's daughter actually on today, and she has a super cool story. She's actually done something that I have always wanted to do, which is write a book. I've always wanted to write a book. I thought it'd be super cool. I have never been maybe creative enough to write a book. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Gabby Scollard. Gabby, thank you so much for being here.
thank you for having me. I'm excited.
All So what we're going to do real quick is I'm going to actually let you tell your story and then I'll sort of jump in with some questions as we go. But I think you have a super cool story. So let's go right to it. Cause I can tell you first off, just real quick, I have watched you grow up online because your mom posts pictures. I've known your mom for a long time, and I've watched you grow up. You're a year younger than my son, Rain,
Mhm.
and went to the same school, so I got to see you graduate and everything else. And I always thought this kid has it all. She's bright. She's got supportive parents. She's attractive. She's got all these things going for her. And that's why this story is so interesting because social media doesn't show you the real world.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about you've written a book.
Yes.
Tell me about the book and sort of the reason you wrote a book.
Yeah, so I've always been a super happy person, super optimistic. And then I actually decided to get an IUD, which is a form of birth control, and it releases a bunch of hormones into your body. And that alone, like I had no education on that. So I think that has to be talked about now because girls go on it for acne, like a bunch of different reasons. And there's obviously the big list of side effects, but you never think like, oh, that's going to happen to me. And I turn into a completely different person. I have this huge chemical imbalance in my brain and I get depression. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I am not myself. I'm irritable. I'm mad. I'm pushing everyone away. Like, I can't get out of bed. Like, I was so confused. And so that was about last winter, went all the way through spring, summer. I felt lonely, but I had people in my life. And it got to the point that I was suicidal. And anyone that knows me, like, would never believe you. And even as I'm sharing my story now, they're like, when was that? Like, I had no idea, and all this stuff. And that ties into the social media being fake. Um, and yeah, so got diagnosed with depression. And it got to the point that I was sitting in my bed the entire day, like, didn't get out of my bed, waking up to going to sleep. And I literally would just sit there fantasizing about dying. And it sounds crazy, but it was just subconscious. Like I was like, this pain, I don't want to deal with anymore. How can I get rid of it? And my depression was telling me that that was the only way that I could get away from this. It was never going to end. Like mental illness lies to you and it turns you into this different person. And I think that's something that can't even be described with words. Like I can't put it into words what it felt like. So I have no energy, I have no will to live. And the hardest part was I didn't want to live, but I was too scared to die. Like I was too scared to do anything about it. And I can laugh about it now, but I am terrified of drugs. Like I smoked weed one time, tripped completely, and I will never touch anything again. And so I was sitting there and I'd be like, well, I can't overdose because if it doesn't work, then I'll wake up and I'll realize I'm on drugs and I'll want to kill myself even more. And then I don't have a driver's license, so I can't go jump off a bridge because I can't ask my mom to drive me to a local bridge. Like, and it sounds so silly to say out loud, but like these were the things that I would just be sitting there going through my head, like, what are the options for me? And
So hang on one sec. I just want to
yeah,
jump in there for a second. That is very interesting. For those of us, I had a client one time that we were talking about mental illness and depression, and he said to me, "You're just lucky because you're wired well." And I've been fortunate enough that I haven't experienced that. I have had some family members, people that are very close to me, that have gone through similar situations. And it is hard for those of us who haven't had it to really understand. I thought you really encapsulated that well. Uh, but it's hard for us to even understand and conceive of the fact that there's that much pain, but then there's that much, you're still afraid to do it because you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Walk me through exactly the feelings in your head, because I think what you hit on something really good there, that where you said mental illness will lie to you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that, because those of us out there who don't have mental illness problems and want to help support people, we don't understand it because we haven't had it.
Yeah. So, before I struggled with depression, like I had no history of it. So, my best friend actually struggled really bad and she would cancel plans on me. She wouldn't get out of bed. And I was like, what, like, get out of bed, like, just do it, or just take a shower, or just do something. And I'd be like, you can choose to be happy. And looking back, I don't know how she didn't like punch me square in the face. Like, if somebody told me that when I was struggling, I would have lost it, because it's such an indescribable feeling of being stuck. Like I would be laying there and I would have no energy to get up, but I felt like crap for laying in my bed, and like I was like, you're worthless, you're, and all of these things. And it really is just figuring out that those voices in your head are not you. And that was something that took me a long time, because I thought, oh, I'm telling myself these things like, you're worthless, you're stupid. But it is the depression, or it is the anxiety, like it is the mental illness. It is not you. And that's something that's really important to decipher between, because once you realize that it's not you, you realize you're fighting against something, and then it's a lot easier to like separate yourself from. So I think that's something that was really important, and I wish I knew going into having depression. But yeah, unless you experience it, it's really indescribable.
I read a book one time, and they talked in the book about the importance of they called it your sidekick, who's in your head, who has something to say about everything. And I'm a guy that I have a thought process about everything going on. And
Yeah.
usually for me, it's funny stuff. So I joke around with people all the time now that we're wearing masks in the grocery store. All the stuff that I used to have to think in my head, I can kind of murmur to myself because it's even funnier if I say it out loud. That is, we all have it. We all have that internal voice. The problem for people, I think, if I'm explaining this correctly for you, is that internal voice starts to become your enemy
Mhm.
and wants you to feel terrible,
Yeah.
rather than, for me, my internal voice is trying to tell me funny stuff
Yeah.
all day, and I think I'm a riot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I, and that would be, I can't imagine how hard that would be on your head for you, because
Yeah.
that is a challenge. I mean, the things I say all the time, that if I had a voiceover, it would be awesome. I'd be so pleased with myself I could have a voiceover, because I think my internal stuff is hilarious. I'm really not that funny, by the way, but I think I am. But that's sort of one of those things that I think that people don't get. And I think you really wrap that up very well, where you explained it. It actually is just beating you up every day. It's like having your enemy giving you hell every day and telling you you're terrible. That would be, it would be awful.
Yeah, like you have that voice. So picture that being replaced with someone that you don't recognize, and they're inside of your head and you're fighting with them and you can't get away from them. Like it's such, you're just stuck. It feels like you're stuck in your body, you're stuck in your brain, and nothing's ever going to get better.
So, okay, so you're in grade 12 at this time, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm 19 now. It was last year when I was in my senior year of high school.
Okay, so you explained to me when we talked originally a little bit. So you started to journal a little bit at this time. So walk me through how that happened.
Okay, so basically, I'm sitting in my bed and I'm like, I can't overdose. I can't do all these things. So let's buy a journal. That was I was like, last ditch effort. I've heard people um, like writing has always helped me. Like I've always loved writing. So I buy a journal, and it's really cool because I have it right here. Like this is the journal that I bought. So if you look through it, I guess I should explain that how this book came to be. Every time that I was feeling suicidal or that voice was telling me lies, I would write down a reason why life was worth living and why I needed to stay. So that's where the book stemmed from. And so I have all the reasons. Like it's just pages and pages.
Wow.
Yeah, you can see there, like it goes on, and you can see like the separate days. And I would just go back, reread it, write new things. And by the end of it, like I had hundreds and hundreds of reasons. And it was just such a nice outlet to see like my thoughts somewhere else. Like I saw it on paper, it wasn't all on me anymore. And I think that's really important to deal with mental illness. And so I have all these reasons, and slowly I'm recovering. And I'm like, okay, if these reasons helped me, why can't they help someone else? Like, as I started to see more clear. And I was like, you know what? Like, I want to share it in case it can help even one person. So that's where the idea of the book came in. And people were like, how did you write a book so fast? I already had all the content. Like, I was during my depression, I was writing all this. I didn't have to write anything other than the intro and the outro. So it wasn't like, oh, I sat down. And I think that's really cool about this book is I didn't sit down and be like, I'm going to write a book right now. Like, I didn't mean to write this book, and I talk about that in it. And so it's really just the raw emotion of I wanted to die. These are reasons that gave me light in my hardest times. And like, you can see these reasons are the exact ones in my book. Like, they directly correlate right from my journal, which is really cool, I think.
I think that's about the coolest thing ever. Like I said before, I have always wanted to write a book. I thought it'd be super cool to do it. I have an English degree. One of my degrees is in English, and I love reading. And I was just blown away that first off, you wrote a book by the time you were 19 years old, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That is really impressive. I mean, I'm 48 and I have not written a book and I always wanted to. That is super impressive, but even more so the book, because I think it has the ability and the opportunity to actually impact and help people who are either struggling exactly like you were struggling, or people who aren't even struggling. And a positive outlook and a reason to be in a better headspace is good for everybody.
Yeah, because I made it as it's not like a book that you read and then you toss it in your closet or you get rid of it. Like, I really want it to be an outlet for people, and there's 365 reasons, and there's one reason on each page, and the rest of the page is blank. And I did that on purpose so that if my reason doesn't correlate with you, because I'm a 19-year-old girl, like, obviously your reasons are going to be a lot different to stay maybe, but there's also general ones. But I left all that space on the page so that you can write your own reason. Like, let my words be just like a muse for you, and you can write out why you want to live. Like, it's a journey for yourself too. It's a journal style to kind of like give the reader that therapy style of like, oh, I can like do exactly what I did, write down the reasons. And it's just a little push to hopefully help people do that.
And that's just what I was thinking. It literally, what you've created is a journal for people that is guided. You didn't have a guide and you had to do it on your own, but you've now created an ability for people to have a journal and follow along with, hey, this is something that was good for me, which will
Yeah.
key in their mind something that will be good for them. And even if it's different, it will help. That's the coolest part of this. I mean, I remember when you first explained this to me, I thought, what an amazingly good idea, and why has no one done this before? It just kind of blew my mind that it's so, I felt like it's almost obvious and it should have been done. But hey, I kudos to you, because you're the one who came up with the idea. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, and I think when you experience like the lowest of lows in your life and all of this pain, like, obviously you're not going to be like, oh, I'm glad I went through this, but it puts you in a position to help others, and that gives you a sense of purpose. And you wouldn't be able to understand people that went through that without experiencing it yourself. Like, I can now understand what my best friend was going through, and I can now help her when she hits those episodes, instead of being like, just be happy. And like, I know as when I was experiencing the depression, I would never tell you that I'm thankful that I went through it. But looking back, like, I think it did a lot of things for me that wouldn't have happened if I didn't experience that. So that's all about one of my messages is life is happening for you and not to you. So that was a big perspective change, and that's something I'm thankful for. So pulling out those blessings out of those heart-wrenching experiences is something else that I like to um, get across to people.
And I think that's a great point. I talk to my kids about that a lot, that you can experience life in different ways. You can experience life as everything happens to you, and you respond to things that are happening, or you can make things happen any way you want. And it's quite amazing that how much you can change things in your life just by what you're doing, perspective, journaling, thinking about things in a different manner. It is very impressive. Now, I want to touch on social media quick because, again, I watched you grow up on social media. I've known your mom for a long time. I
Yeah,
think I would have met your mom when you were
little.
maybe one or
Yeah,
two. I think it's been a while, right?
couple of years
Uh,
ago.
yeah, just a few years I've known your mom. So you went to school. You went to school. My son, my oldest kid, and he struggled with some stuff in school. He has struggled with some mental illness issues as well.
Mhm.
So when he graduated high school, it was a little bit for me. I don't know the best way to put it. It was a little bit bittersweet. I was excited
Yeah,
for him that he'd gotten through it. I was excited for him that maybe he's going to take some next steps in his life and hopefully go in some better directions. And it was exciting for him, but at the same time, it was tough. I mean, for all of us in our family, because we know he was getting through something. He's still in the throes of that now. He hasn't fully recovered yet. So it was a tough, and I don't want to tell his story because it's about
yeah,
you, but it was a tough situation. And then I watched, a year later, and of course I saw all the stuff your mom posted, and I think it's in retrospect interesting because I would see your mom take you to the beach and you guys would do this and that, and I thought, what an amazing relationship they have. And I actually inside I was jealous of that. I'll be honest. I would, because I thought, and when I saw you graduate, I thought, why couldn't that have been an experience that I had with my son? Why is I'm jealous of Gabby and her mom on the things they're doing together, because my son at this point was going through some a lot of stuff, and we were tight, but he didn't really want to spend a lot of time with me. That's an interesting look because I had no idea at all that you were struggling at that point. Looking at you, it's like you had the world by the tail. Talk to me a little bit about social media side, because now that I look at it, I'm like, oh, her mom was taking her to do things because she was stressed out and trying to get her out of the house.
yeah.
Wow, okay, but not what I thought at the time.
Yeah, and that's crazy that you bring up the graduation story because that was a really hard period for me. And I woke up that morning, cried my eyes out, put some makeup on, went and took pictures. On the drive home, bawled my eyes out, and then stayed in my bed for the rest of the day because it took so much out of me to walk across the sidewalk for a graduation for 15 minutes. But all you guys saw was the happy pictures that me and my mom posted of like, oh, graduation, like, congrats, Gabby. But I wanted to die during those pictures being taken. And I can look at my Instagram and point out multiple pictures where I'm smiling and happy. And I was at the peak of my depression. Like, it's everything that you want to show. It's a highlight tape. Even right now, I look really put together from the waist up. I have PJs on and like one sock. Like, it is completely fake. And um, someone actually, because when I posted a GoFundMe for my book, which was the first time that I explained that I'd been struggling, and my mom shared it to her Facebook, and one of her Facebook friends that was at my graduation time because it was on a sidewalk, so we all had different like slots. She came over and talked to us, and she shared with my mom, and she was like, I saw you guys. I thought you had it all. I was so jealous of you and your daughter's relationship, of how happy you guys were. And my daughter was over here falling apart. And looking back, I had no idea she was struggling. And so I thought it was really cool that she shared that because it made me feel like, oh, if I put my message out, like, people are going to see that you can look like you have this perfect life, but you are completely falling apart inside. And that is why you cannot compare yourself to social media. Like, you are comparing your reality to someone else's highlight tape. And that's really important to keep in mind, I think.
And it's not, and that's the amazing thing about social media. There's a lot of positives with it. I obviously use social media a lot for work and to
Yeah.
communicate with people. Um, but I always say it's not even a highlight tape. It is a curated highlight tape of fake stuff
Yeah.
for the most part. I mean, mostly I try to post things that are really honest, but again, I don't share a ton of stuff. Things that are tough, you don't talk about.
Yeah.
And very few people ever talk about that on social media. And that's why I think you discussing this now and being so honest about it and completely raw about it is going to help a lot of people. Because I was just like your mom's friend. I
Yeah.
was sitting there on my phone looking at you graduate going, man, I wish that had been the experience that Rain and I had. Wow, they have such a tight relationship. And I'm sure that there are probably people that look at pictures that I've posted and say the same thing about my family and not know that there are always going to be struggles, always going to be challenges, and nobody puts it out there. And maybe it's something, I don't know. What do you think? Should people be more honest in their social media?
I mean, I think it's hard because there's stuff that just like you don't need to share with the world. Like, you shouldn't have your entire life and everything out there. But also, I think if you're just pretending that what you're doing is perfect and all these things, people are going to look at it and be like, why is that not my life? And I think my generation, especially, is just so confused on everything that's supposed to make you happy in life. And then you do it, and it's like, why don't I feel like I'm fulfilled right now? And why don't I look like that? Like, it's such a toxic thing, but it's such a hard divide. Like I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know the border between sharing and not sharing. But I definitely think we have to stop pretending like our lives are perfect because that's going to make any normal human being feel like they're doing something wrong.
I like to talk to my kids all the time and about, I mean, I've been divorced, and I always say to the kids, don't think about getting married until you're at least 30, because what the things that you like and you think that you like when you're 25 or 26 or 28 or something like that, when you're older, that's not stuff you are interested in. I joke with my wife now, because I'm like, hey, listen, if you met me when you were 22, you wouldn't be interested in me
Yeah.
because like, that would not have been your thing. It is interesting how you change over time and how you realize what is important. And that's the hard part about social media, is because you see all day long. Like, I remember I had a client about, oh geez, it was about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and she said everybody's going down south, and she was frustrated that she wasn't going down south. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not going down south. She's like, oh yeah, you're that's I'm like, I don't actually know anybody that's like but when you see it on social media, it just keys up and you see the same, like you said, highlight reel of things. And then it puts, and I think it's everybody, it's every generation, but it is harder for younger people because they're constantly bombarded. I talk about, in my, obviously my social media, like for example, Instagram. For me, I follow a lot of fitness people, bodybuilders, stuff like that. I see that all day long. It is horribly unhealthy to watch people who are, ripped to death all day. And that rollers just pictures and videos that they've done when they've gotten fit, and then they're faking it later on, and they're posting, one of 1,000 pictures they've taken every day. They
Yeah.
don't look like that all the time. I know that, but sometimes it gets in my head too. And it's pretty easy to get yourself in a bad headspace. And I think social media, while it has a ton of positive side things,
Mhm.
it can be hard for people. And it's
Oh,
hard when I think if it's tough for me, and I'm 48 years old and I know the difference, or I should know the difference, I suppose. Yeah, I think it would be hard if you're a teenager or a young adult, because you're getting bombarded all day long with this is what you want. And for me, it was, like I joke about my wife not being interested in me when she was 22, but neither we probably wouldn't have been. But when we met later, all our thought processes and things aligned up, because now we're older and we're into a different headspace.
yeah, and I think that, like you said, like this is all that our generation knows. Like, post that picture. Like, if you don't get enough likes, delete it. If you don't get enough comments, like you're not good enough. And I think that a lot of teens don't have a sense of purpose. Like they put their purpose in validation from others, and that's never going to fulfill you. And that is a really hard part, especially like TikTok. Like you're scrolling through, you're seeing all these like influencers, models, and everyone's like, drop the workout routine. Like, and it's like, that's their genetics. Like, you're not
Yep.
going to. So it's just so, like, we're all looking at things that aren't, and you're posing and you have the right makeup on and the right light. And it's just like, I feel so bad for this generation. They compare themselves to that every day. And like I get stuck in it, like anyone that has social media gets stuck in it. So I think that it's really important that anyone that follows me and thought I was so happy living the life, like I think it's important that they know, like, no, I wasn't, but you can put a face on, and that's what that looked like. So it wasn't real.
So tell me, what's the name of your book?
Yeah, so the name of my book is Why I Stay. Yeah, and it is coming. It's not out yet. It should be, I just put the order in, so it should be in end of March or early April. It'll be available.
All right, that's amazing. So what I want to do is when it comes out, I obviously want to get a copy. I think this is the coolest thing ever. It
Thank you.
is, I am so impressed that you did it. I cannot tell you how impressed I am.
Thank
I don't think words say it because again, I have always wanted to be an author and I think it's incredible that you've done it at 19 years old. When this comes out, I want to come back and do another one and let's talk specifically about stuff in the book because then I can sit right there with you and we can talk about some of the things in it.
Perfect.
Gabby Scollard, impressive, amazing, great to have you on.
Thank you.
You are quite the amazing young woman at 19 years old.
Thank you.
Listen, I'm super excited to just have you on again. Congratulations, amazing message, really amazing message, and I think this will speak to a lot of people, and a lot of people will understand and get where you're coming from, and I think you're going to help a ton of people, which is super impressive
I
and
really
super
hope so.
inspiring.
Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to talk to you again. I really enjoyed our chat today. So look forward to that.
Thank you so much, Gabby.
No problem. See ya.